Hi there, live reality gamers community. We are here to talk about the Amazing Race Season 33, which just premiered yesterday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time and 7 p.m. Central. And here, my name is Bill. I'm from The Amazing Hunt, which is the Vancouver version of The Amazing Race. And joining me today, there's Connor from live reality game community as well.
How you doing, Bill?
Good, good, good. So when we talk about live reality games, we're the community that consists of super fans of reality games like Big Brother, Survivor, and of course The Amazing Race. Some of us love reality TV games so much we keep joining other people's reality TV games, which they can. Most of them are in the states as well as in Canada, and some of them are even more keen and they are super fans, which they produce their own reality TV shows like mine, The Amazing Hunt, in Vancouver, BC. Some people produce one, two, or even more seasons. So today, we're talking about The Amazing Race Season 33 because I have some knowledge about producing competitions. We're going to tackle this a little bit different than a lot of podcasts you see out there talking about mostly recap about the show, but we're also going to talk about some production decision that they make. And if you are actually know some of the decision that they make, if you have any secret tips, please feel free to join us and chime in. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any comments, opinions about what we're talking about, feel free to talk to us as well. So let's see. So the Amazing Race finally come back in season 3 after I think it's one year hiatus. But even though the actual recording they ended in 2018 with season 32, but only aired in 2020. And then this one particular season 33, they start filming in 2020 in February because of pandemic. They have to postpone it all the way till September 2021 and wrap up the production in October 2021. So they only have a few months of actually editing the whole show and present to us, the viewers, our super fans. So we're going to start talking about how the race start. So as we seen in the first episode, the Amazing Race 33 started in a virtual setting, just like the YouTube season is season 28, where all the teams are actually in their home receiving a message from Phil talking about the excitement and they can start the race. So Connor, what do you think about the way they start the race in a virtual setting?
I think it's interesting that, like you said, they did it in like the social media season. Um, if we're comparing it strictly to what we're used to of like the whole starting at the starting line or running down a field of something, I
Mm-hmm.
still prefer like the original running down a field starting line. You get the whole I think there is something to be said about everyone flying, like going to the airport from their home and getting to this destination on their own and kind of like only seeing one team along the way. You kind of miss that aspect of everyone going, running down and all fighting for a taxi, all fighting like on the freeway, like
Yeah,
passing each other up, pass them, you miss that. And I feel like
yeah.
that nothing excites a season more than what like the first 5 minutes you get all that action. And I
Mm.
feel like you miss a lot of it with starting it at home. But on the other side, you get the like family aspect. You get them crying, like, "Oh, I'm gonna miss you so much. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
So it's all depends on what you like. What did you think about it?
Well, I think about it. I think for me, because I'm the producer of the local version of the Amazing Race, right? So I will talk about from my point of view as a production side of it. If you have noticed the things in their promo and all the things that are posted, the Amazing Race posts on Instagram and Twitter, you see all the teams are actually done their interview in the same similar background, which is trees, grasses, I think they would gather in the one location to do all their production work. And then you kind of think that they will probably also start the race in that similar setting as well, which unfortunately, because I don't know a lot of people who actually work on the Amazing Race, I know there are some viewers have secret connection to the actual production team. So I can talk about from me, if I were the producer doing my race, what I would do or what I think may happen. So then when you kind of looking at all their promo and you think that they will actually have a starting line, just an open space, like you said, running to the back, grab their first clue, very exciting, and depart at the same location all the way to the nearest airport. But then we actually get a starting line at home where they connect to the which where can connect to their personality as well as their family more so by living each individually living from their states. And it's I think it's kind of interesting where they actually some of them they pick um, two teams from same states or three teams from nearby area. So when they actually schedule it, they can have teams meet to get each other at the same airport, right? So one of the reason I think they would decide to do that probably because they filmed this in 2020 in February. I believe the production team already has some wind about like a pandemic's probably going on, like COVID. So they opt to use this kind of method for the safety of their staff, the racers, to prevent a massive team like we see in probably in the past season 30, where there's massive amount of people, probably 1,000, even more so, gathering in the park in New York, cheering the teams on. Which I think the Amazing Race have been doing that, more like a publicized way of starting the race rather than secretly hiding the teams starting somewhere. I think it's purely just for safety reason. I like both actually in the end of it because you kind of miss the excitement and you kind of want the teams to kind of start kind of having a little bit drama at the beginning, but you get to know the teams a bit more, and so is why they're joining the race and who they're doing it for. So both have their pros and cons a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think it's interesting, like what you were saying about like why are like because like you were mentioning how like in the in the like the cast preseason stuff they were all gathered around kind of the same area,
Yeah.
but then for some reason like they all start at home. I think there has. I think if it's hard to say why, right? It's hard to
Mhm.
get in that mind of that production aspect, which you have way more knowledge of it than I do. But if I, the one thing I want to say, if it is COVID related, if they had like an idea of like why, like that it might be coming or that there was a start or something, that would probably explain very well why the airport they were at was like dead. The airports I've been at, you see people running like I'm missing a flight, I gotta go right now. Like
Yeah.
that airport they were at, there was like
Mhm.
no one there. It was just like them and their like production crew.
Yeah.
So that aspect makes sense. The other aspect is like that I'm thinking of in my mind is like maybe either like they filmed like the beginning stuff, like the at home stuff after this season. I don't know. That doesn't make sense.
Which
A
it
lot
is
of people.
also possible, but like have you chatting with a lot of super fans, they all have their own take on how they do it, whether it's pre-production or post-production.
Mhm.
So we never know unless somebody willing to chime in, especially from the Amazing Race production, right? We hope one day they will join us. So then, of course, then you see all the teams gathering on their nearest airport, and they all fly not together, but they all fly to London, which is their first destination. And just like the recent Amazing Race seasons, where teams all gather in the airport, or once they leave the airport, they will start at the same time.
Mhm.
So then you see a whole bunch of like 11 teams running towards the cab in Heathrow Airport, try to get a cab, and you see 11 cabs like lining up there. I think somebody actually commented, which I read a comment from somewhere, is that you never see so many cabs lining up in Heathrow Airport. It must be production already set up the cab there so they can actually jump in and just race from there, which I think is a very good decision. So kind of uh, give you the excitement that you want, even though they didn't do that in the States, but they actually start doing that in London, England.
Mhm. I think that's a good point as well. I think it's interesting. Like, I think they want everyone to start on out of an even playing field, especially in the aspect of like they didn't travel like they usually do. So everyone got to where they were going on the
Hmm.
same plane, but
Yep.
they got there at different times, right? And they couldn't
Yeah.
control that. They got there at different areas. So
Yeah.
the aspect of, well, they're all going to be on one plane landing. How do we get them starting at like a fair point? And I think that's a
Hmm.
great way of, oh, they're all lined up, you
Hmm.
know. I think you can like I like the fact that production had that set up, but you also know that production wasn't interfering with the aspect of like, okay, this is where they're going, just take them there. Because you saw one team, I believe it was now I'm bad with names, but it was the football coach and his wife.
Connor and Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, Connie and Sam. Thank you. You're gonna need to help me on that one
Yep.
a lot. I'm gonna have to rely
Yep.
on you, Bill. But Connie and Sam went a whole different direction, right?
Yep.
So I like the fact that they're helping it being even playing field, but they're not putting their dirty little fingers in our soup, like are like messing up things and doing crazy
Hmm.
things like that. So I think
I
it's
think,
fair.
yeah.
So I like it.
I think The Amazing Race is very good at that.
Mm.
Can't say the same about other reality TV show. Wink, wink, but nah. So then they will go. They arrive there at nighttime. I will probably think it's probably 6 p.m. in London, and then they all head to. Let me see. Where is it? Oh my god, my Trafalgar Square, which I've never been myself, and they were looking for a red telephone booth. I think telephone booth is still a big thing in London. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm unfortunately, even though I've done so many races, but my international traveling experience is kind of lack of. How about you? Have you traveled to many places? Have you traveled to London before?
Listen, I am a Southern boy who was raised in the South, and like
Yeah.
I live in Minnesota now, but I haven't traveled much further than like besides the South Minnesota. I have not traveled to outlandish places. I've never left America, so even though you haven't traveled that much, you've traveled way more than me, Bill. So you're ahead of me.
So yeah, please, if you have traveled before, do chime in or leave a comment, whether it's on the Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. There you can tell us what we think, if it's right, wrong, based on your traveling experience. I believe like there must be some kind of significance to the red telephone booth, and that's why they have at least a few still be existing, which we don't see it anymore probably in where your place you live. And in Vancouver, they try to get rid of every single one of them at this point. There is no more telephone booth. Everybody has a cell phone, but I think red telephone booth probably it means have a significant meaning in the culture and the history of London, or even in Britain, right? So,
I would think so as well. And I know, like, there's probably like, how like a lot of UK and TV shows, a lot of them still like a lot of them are like the scripted ones. A lot of times the setting is in the past. A lot of the time,
yeah.
so when you watch those shows, even though they're filming it now, you still this the it's in the present and
Hmm.
like the what the so you still see those things. And so I think that they want that aspect of as well. And what's in the past, even though we're moving on, you don't need those things anymore. It's still
Hmm.
a nice thing to see because you
True.
can I think it's a pleasant thing to see. So I think it's great they still have them, even though probably no one's using them.
And yes, well, we wonder how Superman changed their clothes right now, right? So then teams have to grab clues from the red telephone booth, and each telephone booth only have two clues available. That's a good change. So it creates some scrambling going on, and you see some teams doesn't actually get some; they have to search for another one. Only if we can know if the teams actually how many telephone booths, mobile telephone booth they have to run to. That'll be more fun. Then after that, they go to let me see. Then it's a detour challenge, which is called Artistan and Digiban. So they talk about the what was it called again? They talk about the contemporary art style that's actually very popular in London. um, the other side of it is actually about a digital DJ, a person who do digital DJ music. They call it digiband. I think Amazing Race is actually very smart. Sometimes how they create the challenge as well as naming the challenge. It's sort of like have a double entendre stuff to go on. Like so they try to match the artist then sort of then they have to create something. I believe the person whoever played that DJ music it doesn't mean band, but the things they try to have the teams to find like little band then and then they have to say that the other person is probably named Ben, which I'm not sure if that's real or not, but either way, they are very clever on the word choice playing. So we know that the artist then they have to put up puzzle. The Shiban basically it's more like a physical challenge in which they have to run to places, and
Mhm.
based on some cultural references in Britain, which create some funny moments with the teams. Some teams doesn't know what Bobby means. I don't. Seriously, I don't.
Me neither.
Then yeah, and then their little Ben. I don't know how they know about that, but maybe they ask around. And then, of course, I think the clue is very well written, so they actually just have to follow the clues.
Mhm. I think both tasks had their interesting points. I mean, it's really like a old fashioned of you want to go brain route, you want to go the physical route. I mean,
Yep.
I think I think the big difference in between the two of them is the idea that if you do the more physical running aspect, you can have people help you. There's
Yes.
people on the streets. You can be like, "Where is this? Where do I need to
Hmm.
go?" And they'll tell you. And if they're, as long as they know what they're talking about,
Hmm.
you arrive there. It's gonna take time, but you'll arrive there. And with the other task, I think it was a little bit more complicated
Hmm.
because like you were saying, the running detour is straightforward. The clue was very straightforward. This one I need to do. Okay, cool. With the other detour with the puzzle, they didn't even know it was a puzzle. The clue didn't even explain the fact that it was a puzzle. The teams had to figure out that it was a puzzle.
Hmm.
That's why you saw the singing cops make that, like someone say, fatal mistake of just, oh, all we gotta do is glue these on. Okay, let's just glue these all over the place. They didn't realize it was a puzzle, and I think um, that was a mistake, and that's how why I think the puzzle one was a bit more trickier.
Yeah, definitely. Because personally, I'm not really good at puzzle, even though I think the art itself is resemble a British flag, but it's kind of like very artistic take on it. And by cutting into so many pieces, not only that you have to put it together, but you also have to stick it very perfectly on the wall. It's quite difficult compared to the physical challenge.
Mhm. Most definitely, and I think the puzzle was not an easy puzzle. It's so complicated because it's the same like 3, 4 colors but different designs. You have to pay so close attention to what you're doing, and the tiniest mistake, you'd have a hard time figuring out what you did wrong. And it just seemed very, very, very complicated. And like the more you mess up, like what happened to the steam comps, the more your pieces
Hmm.
start tearing apart. Like that seems so complicated, like that. But I think equally, you can do that one rather fast, right? If you have
Hmm.
a good eye for
Yep.
puzzles. The one is more physical, but it's also gonna like the standard of it's gonna take more time. You're not gonna be able to do that in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Whereas the puzzle you could
Yep.
theoretically if you were really good at puzzles. So it's really a matter of which route you want to go. No pun intended.
Yeah, of course. And then clearly, I think after we, as the viewers, we all watched that, we kind of believe that the DigiBen is actually a faster choice in this detour. So then most people would say, well, I will never do a puzzle. Like what I think either Lulu or Lala said, I will never do a puzzle again in my life. Trust me, like as a producer of doing the race myself, sometimes we always have contestants I will never do this again. I never eat more yogurt. I'll never do that. It's kind of just an overwhelming factor where, and especially when you're competing with so many teams at the same time, you sort of put it into yourself in a mental space where it's like, this is too tough. I can't do it. I mean, of course, it is tough, but kind of saying that it just make the show much, much fun to watch. And it's like, yes, it is a task that designed very well to sort of um, challenge the teams and to make them freaked out a little bit. And we just have somebody comment on it. Is Peregrine. Can't read her, can't read the name. Fortunately, sorry about that. Oh, there. Oh, I kind of recognize that person, but he picked a very difficult name for me to pronounce. Okay, so Digiben all the way for Dustin. Yes, thank you, Dustin. Yeah.
I think personally, like if I'm just reading the clues straight up, I'm probably gonna do the puzzle route just based on what I'm seeing. But as soon as I
Mhm.
get there, I'm gonna be like, oh, I don't like this at all. So, it depends. Like, are you physical enough to be able to run that? That's really what
Mm.
it comes down to. So,
Yeah. And then what I'm trying to say. So this is the thing where I find out like the first episode, which we see that the race in the race perspective, where they take the teams to very good locations, which for people who don't travel much like me, they will be. I'm really appreciated that the race is back on. So they took us to the square. They took us to the um, the museum as the pit stop, and as well as just kind of like going through the famous part of the street, and as well as the one of the station. You kind of appreciate the fact that how they arranged the course. I personally really don't like the fact that sometimes they do a little like choose the little known location and they say that it's familiar, it's popular among the locals, but as a foreigner, you kind of feel like you won't ever actually go to some places that's actually only the local would know. So I think the location they choose in the first episode are pretty great. Then after that, we know that teams actually have to go through to a, I think it's a coffee shop. I'm not too sure if it is. Is it a coffee shop, Connor?
Um, my memory of that is not very good, so I am
Yeah.
not sure.
So then, in a sense, they have to meet the Queen and also the Prime Minister of England, and then sort of grab a clue from them and head to the pit stop in the National History Museum.
I believe it was a
And
restaurant. Now that I think about it, because I believe they had food, so it seemed like some sort of like restaurant.
yeah, it'd be good if they explain why they choose that location. I think a lot of people might know about that, but for people who haven't traveled at any time to in England or in London, we probably don't know the reference why they picked that location. But it'd be good if they could tell us a little bit. And that's what people tell me too. Some ask me sometimes, why did you choose this? I have a hard time explaining it, but yeah. So maybe the
There's
amazing
always
reason.
a rhyme or reason. There's always
There's
a reason.
always a reason for that. Yeah. So of course, then then the teams check in the National History Museum, where you don't see the greeters at the pit stop with Phil, and that's a big change,
Mhm.
right? So then you kind of realize productions is very aware of how the news are going on during that time in the 2020 in February, where there was already some news internationally about COVID situation. So for that reason, I believe that they unfortunately have to not to have the greeters stand next to Phil. And at the same time, you don't really see a lot of production people as well. I know the Amazing Race are pretty good at hiding them, but it is really difficult to see anybody there. It's just like the museum is actually reserved for the whole Amazing Race team, which is perfect.
It's like again, like when they're on the street, you see people, right? But when
Hmm.
they have to go to their tasks, and like when it's like the museum and like the restaurant, like there's no people. So when a production is like can control where they're at,
Hmm.
and obviously when they're not running around the street, you can see that like there's not a lot of people. So I believe you are correct in your statement of COVID hasn't like the pandemic is not a pandemic yet, and we're not
Yeah,
being told like you have to. But there's definitely like they're hearing stuff about it. They're hearing
yeah,
about something, and they're leading them to believe like, okay, this could be a thing.
yeah.
How do we be careful about this just in case this blows up into a huge thing? Which, spoiler alert, if you've been living under a rock, it has blown up into a huge thing. So,
Yeah, yeah, we are all time travelers at this point. No, we all know about that now. So, yeah,
now,
it's good that they already take precautions with all the productions starting since 2020 February. So then, one thing I'm very impressed about, which you see that when the first team checked in, which we're not going to say who, so at least people can still watch the show. You only see one angle for the camera person. They're filming the team's arrival. Then when the second, third team arrival, you can start seeing that oh, there's a different angle of camera filming teams from like from underneath or from over the stairs, which I totally appreciate that when they choose the National Museum where they have other places where the camera person can just go onto a different location to film it, in a different perspective for everything. And for producer like for me when I'm producing my own race, it just very I really appreciate when my camera operator is actually doing the same thing where there are multiple teams showing up. They can go to different locations. It's always good in editing wise and actually shows a different side of the sort of building structure as well.
you can tell these people know what they're doing. Obviously, they do. This like the 30. What season is this? 32 something?
City
34?
33, 33.
Right. I was like a sandwich. I was here, and then I was here. It was right the
Yeah.
cheese in the middle. But you know, they know what they're doing. Like even
Yeah.
season like 1 and 2 and 3, once they got their groove, it was like the same thing. They know what they're doing. They know how to do these things, and it's
Yeah.
just incredible that the experience all these people have. Like, it's a
Yeah.
good show, and it's people like them that know what they're doing is what makes the show great.
Yes, it is. So then all the teams checked in. Unfortunately, one team got eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which we already mentioned a few times about some teams made a huge mistake on,
Yep.
but you will find out yourself. Okay, so then let's see. So in episode 2, which they actually do a very smooth transition about the fact that they introduced the nighttime in London, then went to a daytime version of it, and you can see all the teams are actually leaving around almost the same time for the first 5 teams. Apparently, they were about 20 minutes apart from each other, and then you kind of see that the last team who was not eliminated arrived 10 out of 11. They were almost about 2 hours behind, which is a big gap considering now there is really in the recent season there is really a lot of not a lot of chances to catch up if you were that far behind.
Mm-hmm.
So then they all went to doing a roadblock in the Postal Rail Mail Museum,
Mm-hmm.
which they went to underneath the sort of railway and to deliver mail. Then they have to search Amazing Race clue from a sort of like a whole bunch of mail. I don't know what that calls, but this is a redo of the task. It's like a switchback back in season 11, which infamously eliminated Rob and Amber when they were the last team to find a mail that has their name on it. So this season 33 task was an easier version where they only have to find Amazing Race envelope. But surprisingly, you will see some teams are just making things a little bit more complicated than it should be.
Mhm. So I want to talk about this with you because I want your perspective on this. I want to circle back just a little bit. I want to ask your perspective on the aspect of, you were mentioning that the team that finished in 10th were really far behind.
Yes.
Now, from a perspective standpoint, a lot of times at Amazing Race Pass, what they would do is like, okay, everyone gets to like the post office place. Okay, we all gathered around, wait for it to open up. Once it opens up, all the teams are there, even playing field again. Do you like that aspect where they even out the playing field like for the teams on purpose, kind of? Or do you like the aspect of, oh, if you fell behind, you're stuck behind, better catch up?
I think in this case, I think like we as production side of it, we always try to predict several ways how the race would go. I
Mm-hmm.
think for the teams that really fell behind, I'm almost going to say the name. I try not to say that, but for the teams that really fell behind, they were really fell way behind. I think it's out of production's sort of prediction on it. So they were like, well, if you're that late, I don't think there's any way I can save you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, at the same time, because you have to understand from the production point of view, they're probably aware of the situation where the COVID is actually exist, but they don't know what the actual like the effect of it. I mean, it was actually good with the situation where you see only 2, 3 teams at a time enter that rail. You don't see all 10 teams enter at the same time. That may not be a good situation if you think about it. If you know now how the COVID situation is. I think that that was actually a better choice for teams to kind of split up a little bit more than just basically create a launching point at the I need to actually know how to read the place. Anyway, just called the mail rail, right?
Mail, that sounds right. It rhymes, so it must be true if it's the Amazing Race. If it rhymes, that's how you know we're probably onto something.
Yeah.
Um, so this test is very interesting. I think ultimately we can say safely, I feel like it was kind of a bust, a little
Mhm.
bit, right?
Mhm.
And I think production standpoint on this, their mindset was like, okay, we want teams to overthink this, right? We want teams to be digging through the boxes and take them a long time to realize that, oh, it was right underneath. And I think that's what they were going for, was like they want teams to have that like doo-doo edit moment. Not doo-doo. What is it, like the dodo? Sorry, dodo edit. Scratch that out. The dodo edit moment where they're like,
Yeah.
oh, and then like where they can like be like, oh, I'm going digging through boxes, and the camera can zoom in, and it's just the clues right there. That's what they were going for. But ultimately, it kind of failed when teams are just picking up the boxes and go, oh, it's right here. So I want your perspective on, like, if that's what they were going for, the overthinking aspect of it. and like the whole like want to give them the dodo edit and all of that. How
Mhm.
could they have still achieved that with the same task, but also like not making it a total bust and teams finding it immediately?
I think this is the thing where in the past few seasons of the Amazing Race, I've noticed that how difficult a challenge could be and how complicated an instruction is. As a viewer, even as a viewer, no matter how Phil explains it, you kind of still like, okay, that's a little bit too much for me to take in, even within just while watching TV, even though I'm not in that race environment, right? So then I really appreciate how this season so far, every task were very straightforward in a sense that they just tell you this is what you need to do. They don't tell you how you do it, but this is just a very straightforward way of doing it, and that's actually pretty good. So, but then people who like super fans, like a lot of teams are like Kim and Penn. Of course, they want to go on that gonna show for they want to go on the Amazing Race for so long. They probably watch every single season. They're probably a huge fan of the show. They'll be like, well, it cannot be that easy just for a task like that, right? So it sort of kind of threw you in a loop. And the same thing I do sometimes for the teams that participate in my race. It's the same thing. They will overthink something. They just don't think that that's easy. I think it's just the environment that you're in. You always create a way to doubt yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
that same thing goes with like Survivor, for example. You always doubt that is it really just that straightforward? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's just how people's mind work.
Mm. Most definitely, and I think it says a lot that the task is a bust when people find it so easily and think to themselves, this can't be that easy."
Yeah.
That's how you know, like, oh, we might have messed up, Rod. I was thinking about like how they could, like what I was asking you, kind of like how they could take the same task and how could they make it like a little bit, more refined. Do you think the idea to change that is throw triple times the amount of boxes, right? Way
Hmm.
more boxes and stuff. But instead of putting it at the bottom,
Hmm.
maybe tape it to the bottom of one of the boxes. And so they're just looking at boxes and digging in and not realizing that if they flipped over the box, the clue would be glued on or like taped on. Do you
Hmm.
think that's a way to like enhance like this task just a little bit?
Yeah, we hope the Amazing Race is hearing this because that will be the third time they can do the similar challenge, right? We can listen to Connor about that. They can do that again at some point, right? Yeah, it is out of my surprise. It's a little bit easy, but I think their focus is not on that. It's more so a physical aspect where you have to dig it through. We like as a long time viewers, we all know that the clue is not going to be that easy to find. They could be just at the bottom, which every clue is at the bottom anyway. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. Where I think like you think it's a very all the tasks they designed for the first two episodes are very straightforward. We'll be looking forward to see if they are sticking with that for the entire season, which I do appreciate a lot. It's easy and it does create some very simple but very effective drama in there. Then we have teams 1-2 do another detour challenge, which is called the uh, I
You
don't know.
mean a roadblock, right?
That was
No,
the roadblock. Yes,
that was
that
a
was
roadblock.
the
Yeah, you're
roadblock.
right. Detour.
Yeah.
What am
So
I?
then it goes to detour. I have my notes here, but it's about the darts, and I saw a decorate the mate. I think they call it. Let me find out later, but that's fine. So then once again, you have two challenges. They design in a way where one's definitely more difficult, but it's a very straightforward thing where they can, if they know how to do it, they can do it very fast.
Mhm.
The other one, you have to spend a lot of time to do it, but there is no technique to it. You just have to basically know which two countries are still in EU, which
Mhm.
I'm very surprised for the flight attendant. Actually, they pick,
Yeah.
yeah, they pick England, still being the EU, and I think Raquel was actually saying that I don't watch news. Raquel, don't feel bad. I don't watch news either, so I don't really know about that. Well, actually, I knew about it, but I'm the person that actually don't watch news.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things where I don't know what's going on. So
I mean, the news is a very okay. There's pros and cons to the news. On one hand,
yeah,
the news keeps you informed, right?
yeah,
You're in the know with the news. On
yeah.
the other hand, the news is the most doom and gloom and boring thing you can watch on television. Sometimes you don't want to deal with the doom and gloom. You want to turn on Cartoon Network. That's the funness. That's what you
Mhm.
want to watch. So you have to kind of waver, the whole aspect of like this is boring this is
Mhm.
awful. I hate this. Or like, let me watch
Yeah.
let me watch like something really exciting, like Golden Girls. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like it's one of those things.
Yeah. Well, and talking about that, it's actually a memorabilia right now for a lot of people right now if they're watching
Yeah.
Golden Girls, right? So, let's see. So then you see some teams are like for me personally, like I will only know one out of the many countries that who are still in the EU, but which I didn't realize that I don't know if the person who actually checked the cake, if they have to be exactly the same number of blueberry
Mhm.
or strawberry or whatever the fruit they're using when they're decorating the cake, or they just have to look as nice as the one they presented there, and then they don't have to make it messy. Like I think Kim and Penn was actually, or whoever team is actually make a little bit drip on the side. That's why the cake artist actually returned that cake and asked him to do it again.
Mhm. I think it's very telling that, like, you when you comes to a like the professional, like you get the cake artist, and then you've got the artist, the
Yeah.
painting artist at the other task. It's interesting how strict some can be and how
Mhm.
more laid back the others can be, but it's up to their own discretion. If you look back to the painting task, the puzzle one,
Mhm. Mhm.
the judge there was
Yeah.
so strict. He was like, "This is a centimeter off. Fix it now." Whereas if you get the other one where he's like, this, a little smudged and, it could get a little cleaner, but you know what? You got the two right countries, and that's more than these other bozos. Here's your clue.
Yeah.
So I think I like the fact that there's no like manual to go by. It's just up to their own discretion, and these people are professionals, so like let them decide.
Yeah, and then we know that some viewers, from what I read all over the internet, there's some viewers claiming that the tasks were too easy and doesn't really stand out much in the London, where they have to find things, make a puzzle, or shoot darts and make a cake. But I think something sometimes it makes you appreciate things very easy and straightforward, right? And then
Mm.
how they designed it, I think they maximize the tension of each task. I think whoever designed the task in these two episodes, I know how to make detour like a detour again. Because in the older season, you know that the detour always has its pros and cons. And one challenge is definitely going to be difficult than the other. But it really depends on if you have the skill or not. But in a more recent season, it's more like let's have something that will spend 10 minutes. That's difficult. Let's have something else that's about 12 minutes. So it doesn't really make much difference about it. And it's like more like it doesn't really test your skill. So for the darts, if you know how to shoot darts, you can basically finish it in 5 minutes and then or less than that. And in the cake making, it's a repetitive method that you have to just keep doing again, again, again. Of course, your personal knowledge about EU may come and hinder you or help you, and that just depends on the team.
Mm. One thing I wanted to ask you, because like
Yeah,
again, you have the production side. When you have the whole like legs pinned out, you pick this is going to be a detour. This is going to be the roadblock. I wanted to ask you about the idea of like the detour they picked and the roadblocks they
yeah.
picked, right? Uh, the detours and roadblocks. I want to know, do you think they chose the right task to be the detours and the right task to be the roadblocks, or do you think like maybe like should they have made, for example, the darts the roadblock? Should they have switched it up? Obviously, you'd have to tweak it a little bit because they were
Yeah.
designed for two people versus
Mhm,
one person. But do you
mhm.
think like did you like the fact they were chosen the way they were chosen, or do you think maybe switching it up would have been more exciting or made more sense?
So this is a thing where, as the producer, sometimes you kind of look at it. I think believe the same thing with the Amazing Race production is like, what can you use in this city, in an area like this? So you then, like you said, you have three tasks on the plate. Then you kind of think that okay, so how long will each task take, right? So they want to still have a balance between the two challenges that choose detour. So technically if like their choice is perfect because darts can be done very fast, and it will be a very boring thing if all 10 teams were doing the same thing. It'll be like same 10 teams doing the darts, just shooting darts. I don't think it's going to be interesting and fun to watch.
Mhm.
However, like I said, people have to take this in effect. At that moment of time, you already see that pub, I would assume it's a pub once again, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are no customers in there. They could have, usually if you see that in a past season of the Amazing Race, you will have a lot of customers there cheering the teams, or they have a lot of B-roll stuff just to film the teams cheering when they actually hit the darts, for example. But in this season, you actually don't see a lot of extras hanging around. So I think it's all about at that moment of time where, for safety reason, that choice for the where they clear out all the people probably in the cake making place as well as the place where they shoot darts. That's the two places where you can clear out people and just do a detour. Where the railroad, I think the rail mail museum, and I didn't know that until I actually searched for it. It's actually a museum where regular people won't have an opportunity to actually go down unless you probably go on this school trip, or yeah, then or something like a tourism thing that you can do. It's not something open to public. So in that sense of it, I think production is very good at keeping what's in mind, what actually works at that time, at that moment of the time. If you're saying that, for example, if there is no COVID, maybe the choice may be slightly different, but we never know about that. It's just whatever time given to you at that moment, that's what you can do. And then for me, because we do a lot of twists and turns in our race, we always see what is the best way to create more drama in the task that was given. Which, for example, in the one that we had, where we recently had a beer drinking race. So beer drinking, you can think about it's only about chugging. No, that's not it. There's Because it's craft beer, we have numerous ways of have teams identifying it. So if it's identifying challenge, you can do it as a roadblock. You may not do as detour because you can have two sets of identification. It'll be difficult, right? So it's always the mindset of what you can make more drama out of this challenge. I think producer always have that mindset.
Mhm. I agree with that. That's a really good point. And one thing I will say that I really, really liked about the dart one specifically is
Yep.
they did their best to make it hard in the
Yes.
sense that they know darts, if you're good at darts, it can be really easy, right? If you're good at it. But what I love they did, instead of it being like, okay, you each get 3 tries.
Mm-hmm.
Just make it. Once you're 3 tries, make it, you're good, right? And then once you make it, the other person makes it, you're cool. I like the fact that they synchronized it in a way that's like, okay, you get 3 tries per round. You both have to make it that round. If you don't make it that round, that's caused a team member, which what we saw like with you have to tell me what the names. The father daughter.
Arun and what's the other's person name? The fan will not be happy if we're like claim ourselves super fans, but
I
yeah,
know, I know.
another team, yeah, the team from Detroit all the way, right? Yeah.
So Detroit versus everyone, right? So
Yeah.
you saw that the father was killing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as the daughter caught up, he got nervous, and then as soon as the daughter got it, he lost it, right? So I love the aspect of the synchronicity of it, where it's like, okay, you have to both make it. Where they could have just done, okay, shoot darts. Once you both make a bullseye, you got the clue. And I love the fact that they did their best to make it a lot harder than on first glance it could have been. And I think that's very, very fair. And I also loved the idea of the other task. I think watching people bake cakes and like struggle and be like, oh no, I got icing everywhere. Oh, what will I do? That's fun as well, They both were fun in their own ways. And definitely to respond to what you were saying earlier, the darts one was definitely a pub. And if they were serving beer, had a whole big thing of beer. And if it's not a pub, there's some underground thing going on, and they need to FBI watch out for that, because if that's not a pub, then why are they serving a bunch of things? Watch out for that one. So I'm sure it better be a pub. I hope it's a pub.
It's a pub. Well, please feel free to comment once again. You can actually comment on our YouTube, Facebook, as well as Twitter. Yeah. So then, of course, as usual, they go to the pit stop after the detour,
Mhm.
and you see they arrive in a bus,
Yeah.
which is double decker bus. Definitely, it's a feature in London. We see that all the time in the movies. We see that all the time in documentary, and as well as a lot of other. Well, of course, we go with a lot of people. We just see that all the time, and when we go visit, but never did. So how the teams arrive, we don't talk about that. I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. That's
but,
fine. Yeah.
but in the end of it, we know that it's a non-elimination leg, which teams get to travel by train to Scotland afterwards, which is a good. But some people comment on it. Why can they not make the first leg non-elimination and the second leg being the elimination instead? There's always production choice. We don't know behind that either.
Mhm.
So I can just maybe simply assume that the production like Lulu and Lala better. No, I'm just kidding. No.
I
So
think,
yeah.
what I think about that is, I think on paper, I think it would make more sense, like fans are saying, to do it the first leg,
Mm,
not elimination, because it allows more for more character development for that
yeah.
second leg to really get to know these teams and then feel more heartbroken when a team leaves. I will
Mhm,
say, like, I think it really clicked for me when I saw the pit stop was in that bus that, okay, they know about COVID. I've
mhm,
never, ever seen, and maybe I'm wrong, you probably know more Amazing Race than I do, a pit stop in a bus. Usually it's out in the open. They have to run to it. Like I haven't seen like they having to climb into a bus. And I thought about this, and I was like,
mhm,
what happens if it's a foot race
mhm.
and a team just pushes another team out the way and just gets into the bus?
I think it's all like there's a lot of things that we don't see behind the scene where this is what I always mention to my racers is that you will see the clue itself, which is like there's the Amazing Race envelope. You
Mm,
rip it open, there will be like a folder, like either Rule Info, Roadblock, Detour. There's the clue card, and there's always something like additional 1 page or 2 page piece of paper that actually have more clear instruction on it. So in that instruction, maybe it says that well, one team at a time, yeah, only one team at a time can get onto the bus. Other teams may have to wait outside, right?
mm,
So we all ourselves do that all the time, but we just like to keep everything on one piece of clue card. So there's a lot of time people who are racer reading it. It's like there's too many things to read, but it is always about production notes.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think they already planned that well. And probably, like you said, there's always precautious about whatever's about to happen,
Mm,
which we see in the preview for the next episode, which is on January 12th on 8 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Central. The third episode where you see Phil will actually come out and actually announce to the teams that the production is going to halt because of COVID.
yeah.
So that will be the last episode produced pre-COVID, and maybe the last episode we'll see the teams riding a taxi.
Mm.
We don't know. We don't know if there's going to be more of that later on, but it is one more episode before we enter the new normal like we're in now.
Yeah. So I think we really covered the aspect of like, what happened and why it happened really, really well. I wanted to ask you, which team stood out to you? Who are you liking? Who is it you want off your screen? Obviously, not like not gonna say if they're in or out, but just based on what you saw in the episode, did you like anyone specifically? Were you a fan of anyone? Did anyone disappoint you on your preseason hopes that you hoped they'd be really good entertainment and weren't?
Yeah. So we all did a draft before, right? And the three teams have picked all married couple. There is a reason for that because I think the married couple will work better together, like Kim and Pan, Connie and Sam, and as well as Isaiah and name name. So yeah, the couple, but I also think Raquel and Kayla, the female flight attendant, they are actually very fun to watch as a team in their pre-interview, and they are definitely really interesting, and you can see them probably also get into either top four, top three.
Mm,
Although we know that even though being a flight attendant will not help, when they come back into race again after the pandemic, there's like because everything is going to be special arranged
mhm.
travel method, which we're not going to say what, but people can read that on the internet. So it may help, but I think they are actually very capable of just think on the fly and do everything in a short amount of time.
Mhm. I was really impressed with the casting. When I saw preseason, I was like, this team's gonna be really boring. I was really concerned about like, oh, I'm worried about the entertainment. Because I'm a viewer first, right?
Hmm.
When you're watching something, you can always imagine you being a competitor, but what you actually are is a viewer. You can imagine
Hmm.
a world, or you can live in the world where you're living in. And
Yeah.
I'm a viewer first, and
Hmm.
I was very concerned with some of the teams on paper. I'm like, am I gonna get entertainment from this team? They seem really boring. Every single team I saw gave me something.
Yeah.
The team that probably gave me the least were probably the Love Island couple. They were
Okay.
okay, right?
Hmm.
But even they gave me something, so I was like cool with them. But every single team gave me something, and I
Hmm.
was very happy. And that's casting is good when teams are giving you something where you can munch on and be like, I like that. So the teams I thought were duds were studs. So I was a fan. I was a fan of the casting, and I'm looking forward to the next episodes. I think they're going to be good, and I'm
Yeah.
really interested. Sorry for rambling here, but I'm really interested to
Yeah.
see how things change after COVID hits and they come back. Because
Yes.
obviously, you could be training hard. You could be like, "This is what I got. I'm coming back like
Yeah.
Usain Bolt, baby. I'm coming back." Doing
Yeah.
a 4 second, like 400-meter sprint. Like you can
Yeah.
train mid race
Yeah.
and then come back and be 10 times stronger. We've never seen that before. And I
Yes, we've
want to
never
see if we can
seen
just
that.
take advantage.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, then from my point of view, when I look at the casting, I think the casting definitely carry the first two episodes a lot, and the editing definitely helps. And because you get to focus on some key points for each team, why they argue, or how they work with each other, and what is this one thing that you want to take away from them as a team, like what they represent,
Mm,
right? Like a wing hour pass, and we in a beer race like we just did in June last year. We talk about representation matters, right? Each team represent a particular thing, which I think viewer can all relate to. So the
mm,
casting is definitely great. The race itself is designed very well. There is no it's just very smooth and clean about everything. I think editing this season definitely feels very different than the previous season, and the music has changed. There's a lot of new music and a lot of old music actually from a lot of older seasons. It kind of brings back some uh, sort of nostalgic feeling about it. For me as a producer, when I also have to look at behind the scene part of it, I appreciate a lot of differences, not the same type of things over and over and over again, which I could say for season 31, 32, it seems it's just the same thing over and over. I'm not a fan of those two seasons, despite what people may think about the alliances. But like we talked about a little bit earlier before we start this podcast, like there's not that much alliance going on, but I think that's not the reason why I think season 32 suffer a little bit, but I think it's because how it was sort of the logistics side of it sort of suffered. I'm not too sure why would that happen, but I think I like season 30 a lot, and this is another season which I'm very excited about.
mm.
And talking about something new, viewers, of course, if they watch the show, avid viewer, they notice that in Amazing Race this season, they actually changed the font, the graphic design, how they introduce the teams, how they introduce the info, detour, and roadblock. It's all become just word based. There is no icon anymore. It's kind of giving a refreshing feeling about it. I'm not here to brag, but the Amazing Hunt actually did that in 2009. So we done that about 12 years before the Amazing Race.
Mhm.
So yes, well, I would like to claim that first. And we also try to do that differently in our 2021 seasons as well, in the beer race and the upcoming other race as well. We like to change things, and we are happy that Amazing Race is actually changing something as well, because if you always have the same thing, it kind of become a little bit stale. But we know that other reality TV show like Survivor, you cannot stop them changing. They always like to try new things. We like the Amazing Race to do that as well. and hopefully we'll get to see some in the future episodes. And we for live reality gamers like us, or people who actually produce live reality games, we are happy, even though we are local produced competition, but we are happy to inspire TV shows like The Amazing Race, Survivor, or Big Brother, one way or the other. We learn from each other. We do things differently because we have smaller scale is always good to change. Bigger scale is hard to change. So we love the TV shows look at ours and to take some good ideas from ours and make their show more interesting, one way or the other.
Most definitely. And like I like the aspect of now that the intros are more animated. They're doing some sort of thing. Whether in the past it's always like, I don't know, it's like they're turning different directions and both team members look at the camera and it's like that's it. It's like, and that's it.
Yeah, I think we're still doing that cheesy one in our end, so we gotta change that hopefully soon. So.
Yeah, it's still cheesy. I was thinking about that. Like, if you can control your own intro, right, and you're just like standing there, what would yours be, Bill? Because I'm trying to think in my head of like, because it's like, you have people doing funny stuff. You have like, people throwing a ball at the camera. Like, what would you do? I was thinking like something crazy.
I actually like every team's intro in this season where they actually being very creative. The only one team that I actually have some sort of issue with was Kim and Pan, because you have seen another team actually did the same pose already. So I'm just like, but it's a good catch, Pan. That it's hard to do that sort of acrobatic pose, especially Phil was saying at the first pit stop, they were saying that we cannot just let the young people take being the more athletic one that actually comes up in the top three, right? Older people need to work hard and be the winning team. Hopefully, we don't know if they're going to be, but definitely physically for a race like this, it's always tough.
Yeah.
Like people from the viewer side of it, they always see that, well, this is easy. Cake making, mail searching, dart shooting, whatever it is, it's going to be easy. No, it's actually not. Even for ours, even it's a local race, the high level intensity of it is difficult because when you put that in situation, it's really hard to calm down.
Yeah. What did you think of Phil giving his input there? Like being like, I think it's time for the older teams to take it and y'all could be it. Because personally, I did not like it so much. I feel like a host needs to be unbiased. The host needs to like be a host. And I was like, Phil knows he's getting older. Phil knows, he knows he's starting to age up there.
I'm going to pull you away from that conversation for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that talking about bias, we know that a lot of people I think we all like certain teams. So it's sometimes I think for Phil to show his personal preference, it's actually good. It's not like a robotic person where you just talk about things like we have Genbot. Geez, is that right? We have
Chanbot.
Darn. Okay.
You were close. I mean,
I think I'm going to get attacked by a lot of different people.
Who is Genbot?
Right? And also we have Jet Pro, which obviously we know that he has his preference and he's not shy away from presenting it.
Alpha males.
Yeah. So then sometimes it's good, but if I were there as a producer, I always say to people, to be honest, I would say that it's time for a female team to win because the Amazing Hunt doesn't really have that much female team winners, right? So secretly, we all kind of encourage some teams if we can sort of help the teams to feel better about it, right? I mean, Penn actually talked about his ADHD on the show. I think that's a good thing because it's always about representation. People would think that having ADHD may be a hindrance to the race, right? And there's certain things in our race as well. There are people talking about their shortcomings, which I'm not going to talk about that because we have a premiere coming out very soon, so you guys can all see that a little bit. But having shortcomings like that we don't want to discourage people. They should always be able to do any adventure, whether Survivor, Big Brother, or The Amazing Race, or any other reality TV show. Your shortcomings can always be a positive side to anything that you do.
100%. And Penn really showed that he's like, I have ADHD, but when I can hyper focus, he even said it's almost like a superpower.
Yes,
So
it is.
I loved that so much. It was one of my favorite things of the episode where it's like, what could be a hindrance if you look at it the right perspective? It can really I think it's all about perspective and not getting yourself down about it. Like he found a beautiful perspective and he found a beautiful thing in it, and I know it's frustrating a lot of the times, but he was able to
Mhm.
super focus and he's like a superhero. So these things,
Mhm.
everyone we want these perspectives out there. We want them on our screen because it can relate to a lot of different people rather than the same you know, boring people on the screen. We want perspectives, and I'm glad we're getting it.
Yeah. So we might learn a few more, see if any teams have any shortcomings in the future episodes. So do remember that the next episode of The Amazing Race is going to be next Wednesday at January 12th, 8 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Central, and also Eastern as well, 8 p.m. So then our podcast will try to get it to you every Thursday, hopefully around the same time as 7 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Central. Am I right?
Maybe a little bit later. Today we started at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9
Well,
p.m. Central. So maybe I think
oh,
that's gonna work a little bit better for me.
it's
So
okay. Just figure out time. I'm really bad with time zone, but
we'll
do
figure it
remember
out.
it's a live reality game podcast which you can follow on YouTube, Twitter, as well as Facebook, and we will have special guests and we'll have uh, people who you're familiar with, hopefully, to join us to talk about Amazing Race. For me, I like to talk about it for the production side. And we have Connor talk about from viewer side of it. We want to do something different and rather than just do a simple recap. So we want to talk about why they do the way they do things. So like a Q&A, in my point, it would be question and assumption rather than the answers. We can always assume why the production doing this way, but we hope one day that the actual racers on season 33 or people from Amazing Race production can actually shine some light with a question that would bring up why they do what they do. Producing races during the COVID is extremely difficult. I know I have produced 4 races, even though it's local, but it's a lot of precautions, a lot of safety measure that you have to bring in, and local is doing locally is already tough. Internationally, it's going to be more difficult.
100%. And they did a great job, and it was a great episode, and this was a
Yep.
great recap, and I think we nailed it, and I think the episode nailed it. So I stay tuned for our next one, guys. Hopefully we can live up to the standard and bring perspectives out there like we did, and really challenge the mind a little bit and think, why this happened the way it did, and do we agree with the production decisions? And stay tuned. Hopefully we get more of that.
No problem. So we'll see you next time, next week, Thursday. Thank you. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Connor.
Bye, Bill.